All right, so here we are, another module for TAB 29. This is kind of a follow-up session to what we've already taught. And today what we're going to do is we're going to just talk a little bit about trend lines, a little bit more, kind of bring some finishing touches to them. And then we're going to talk in depth about kind of the real secret to trading, kind of the putting it all together and growing you on the head game side so it's not such a big negative determinant sometimes in your trading. And it's really powerful because of the system that we have, and it's real powerful because of our money management. So in some ways, some of you are going to say, well, I didn't learn anything new. But I'm going to challenge that because I think what you should do is get a lot different perspective on what it is you already know. How's that? How did that get muted? Thank you. So I want to talk about trend lines, and right now I've drawn a price move a move in the price field, and what we have here is two hits, two lows for which I connect the dots, and then I have my trend. All right, I've got my trend line. So any hit to that afterwards is an acceptable hit, meaning I can take a trade off of it. Now, a couple of things about trend lines. First of all, we have to understand what time period we're on if we're looking at this. The narrower the time period, the more precise our trend line is going to be. And we should demand it to be. Okay? We don't want to have too much play in a trend line. Meaning, if I have this price come down here and bounce, that is not a trend line bounce. It's also okay in this trend line for price to, the fact that it's short here does not invalidate this trend line. The fact that I may have a breach of the trend line and then it comes back in is no different than if I have a pitchfork that does the same thing. Now we'll talk about, does that decrease the probability one can count on a subsequent hit then in terms of this trade. But nonetheless, it doesn't invalidate this particular trend line. However, what you can do at this point, and choose to use a dotted line or whatever, I can't do that with this system, so I'll just draw a different color. You may want to draw a trend line using that low with the next one that may or may not hit on this trend line. There may be, you know, a trend line established here. So you're just setting yourself up for, no matter where price goes, for possibilities. So if you're really active in using trend lines, you're probably going to have multiple trend lines on the same chart until they invalidate themselves. Obviously, in this case, should price, you know, continue to stay above, at or above the yellow line as we move forward, you know, we don't have to worry about this line so much. It'll invalidate itself over time. Okay. So just make sure you have good touches, that you're constantly drawing multiple trend lines until they invalidate themselves. You don't have to have all of your trend lines touch price. So as another example of this, let's say I have a trend line moving up. We've seen this plenty of times where I may have a nice bounce and I have another nice bounce. This was price. Now I'm talking about in the indicator field. Okay, so we're inside peak. And we have this kind of scenario. Maybe even go deeper. And then boom. So just because you move past, you know, at this point here, doesn't invalidate the trend line that you established right here. It's like any support or resistance. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. All right. So this trend line is still very valid. Okay. And this potential trade here is no less stronger than this. Now, again, I would encourage you to draw multiple lines on your charts. So you may have one here, and you also may go ahead and go with the aggressive move here in case this is going to take some sort of steep move up. But that there definitely is a trade. Well, you always want to be accurate. I'm just saying that there won't be slush at all on a 1-minute chart, and there shouldn't be slush at all on a 10-minute chart. The slush starts occurring at higher levels. But when I'm on a 1-minute chart, I need, you know, back to the old saying, close enough doesn't count except in, you know, horseshoes and hand grenades, right? So as I said the other day in the training, I'm not going to teach divergence. If traders know divergence or traders want to go and research and study divergence, that's fine. I'm not going to support it at the group level. So a divergent situation would be a case where price has a trend line moving up and the indicator has a trend line moving down, as a case in point. There's a threshold for that. I don't want to kind of like put a number on it, but I've seen plenty of times where there's trade opportunities where you might see something like price has, I just looked at one where price had a trend line whose angle was about like that, and the indicator had an angle that was about like that. Okay, this one, the price one, actually had a slight upward slope, and this one had a slight downward slope. I'm not going to call that divergence. It's only when it's visibly up and visibly down that I'm going to worry about it. It still, for the most part, does what we need it to do here. Also, understand that for the most part, you want to be drawing the trend line, and I know this seems like it should be intuitive, but I want to go ahead and state it. You want to be drawing your trend line, if it's a single trend line, on the side of the move that you would be trading. Well, yes. In my example of the price here, with a trend line here that is pointing up and a trend line here that is pointing down, this is in case price starts heading down. This is if price continues heading up. When price starts heading down, then my trend line, if I have one available in my indicator, is also going to have to point down. Depends on what you're trading. Remember, we have opportunities for buys into the sells and sells into the buys, as well as harmonic wave convergence. So as I said earlier, the trend line in your indicator has to match the trade that you're taking. If I have indicators with trend lines on the bottoms, these all represent buys that I would take. All right, so there's a question, it's a good question. Is there more important significance placed upon a price trend line than a peak 3 trend line in terms of higher trade probability? No. The difference is, again, let's go migrate to, let's say, a 10-minute chart. The difference is, just like with the box, the higher we move up in time frames, the more slosh we're going to indicate invoke in the indicator. So if I have a trend line here in peak 3, versus a trend line that I have in the price field, price field trend line will have more precision, meaning the measurement of the hit and the retreat from the trend line. It'll be more precise than this one, which is why if we could get them both, that's great. Don't need them both. A bounce off this trend line in the price field can be traded regardless of where the trend line occurs in my peak 3 indicator. It does not have to be at a bottom extreme, even without a trend line here. If I have a trend line, remember it's 1, 2, or both. If I have a trend line here and I'm getting a precise touch to it and I'm starting to leave that touch and my peak 3 is turning and it's this deep, I should be able to use my trend bars to get into that trade. But to confirm the trade. But remember, this line if it's proven, if this is a strong line and it's proven already, I can take this as a live trade. So I had a question the other day about this in terms of a pitchfork. A trend line is almost as good. It's just one hair underneath a pitchfork. But it was the general kind of concept was, let's look at something like the pound yen. And the trader said, hey, 10-minute chart. I had my 5-pip channel that we like to see as a generality. My candles in most of the field of view, 75, 80% of my candles were 2 to 4 pips in size. I was looking at taking a buy, so we're typically looking for harmonic wave convergence. So there was no steep move. I had a channel since it wasn't a steep move, and I'm not trying to do the correction trade, i.e. the buy into the sell, sell into the buy. I had a channel, that was 15 pips wide. So we're knocking off all these great criteria in order to be trading TAB29 on a 10-minute chart. Now, these are guidelines for ideal trades. Don't take me literally here. These are guidelines. That means there's flexibility in them sometimes. Not subjectivity, but flexibility. So, the problem was, what happens when I have this bounce on the pound yen? It was supposed to be a PY. I don't know if it doesn't quite look like that, does it? And I get my peak 3 to flip. I get my 10-minute peak to flip, and we've moved 2 or 3 pips, and my bars start to flip, and by 4 pips, all my bars have flipped, but the candle keeps going, and it doesn't close until 7 pips. Should I take that trade or not? Should I have taken that trade or not? All right. Some of that will be answered in the next section of this module. But here's the deal. On a trend line that's proven itself and hasn't had serious breaches, if I have this scenario or I have a bounce off of it, I can take that live. Just as if I would a harmonic wave convergence trade. Remember that the one goal of TAB29 is to clean up the chart a little and to eliminate some of to most of the -3 stop outs you would get just trading multi-wave. That's all it does. It says there's going to be a little bit more oomph, a little bit more burst out of this, 2-pip move from the bottom of the move. There's going to be a burst out of it with more assurance than you would get with multi-wave. It doesn't increase the magnitude of the trade, how many pips you're going to get. It doesn't increase the probability other than once you eliminate the loss, it doesn't eliminate the probability you're going to get to various targets. There's none of that involved. It's a psychological system to give you trades that have a higher percentage chance of not going -3. So this can be taken live, just like you used to. Now, a couple of things I would look for to make me feel better about the trade, but it's not going to stop me from not taking it. And that is, we've said this about the depth of the pullback of peak 3. There's, on average, and it just depends on the number of pips, and there's a few things involved, but for the most part, we have a power zone. And if the bottom, in this case, of my peak 3 is below the power zone, usually there's enough room for the trend bars to recalibrate, and so they will hit this, they will nail this turnaround. If these bottoms were up here and there was a trend line joining them, I would not, and don't count on this line matching up because I free-handed that. Okay. I'm still looking for the peak 3 to peel back and go the other way, but the trend bar indicator is pretty much invalid at this point because there wasn't enough room, there wasn't enough pip movement in the formulas essentially to allow it to recalibrate. So when it comes down here, it knows that it can measure this turnaround successfully. So in terms of normal extremes, leaving the normal bottom, it's not an issue. We can count on the trend bars. We want that 2 to 4 pip close and the trend bars to flip. When we get less than the power zone and we're dealing with trend line reversals, either in the indicator or a trend line up here, which would allow me to take a trade because, less than the peak 3 hitting the extreme, I can use the trend bars to validate the trade as long as the bottoms of these things are below the power zone. Any questions on that? When they're above it, they're not valid. I wouldn't trust them. They haven't had room to calibrate. It's not that I want to distrust them as an indicator. It's just they've not had room to recalibrate, so they're not accurate. So back to the question about, are the trend lines in the price field more accurate than the trend lines in the indicator? Again, on the smaller term charts, absolutely the trend lines in the price field are more accurate, which is why they have to be more accurately drawn. There's just no slush in them, as there is a little bit of slush on the indicator down here. Now, generally, you're still looking for 2 pips of reversal. It's not a live touch and taking a trade. Anything below the power zone is typically safe to trust the indicators. So depending on how I drew those lines for the power zone, when it starts getting really close, I'm not going to, I would give it the benefit of the doubt of not being close enough. So I would trust these two, the first two. I would use my trend bars for confirmation and not here, unless it was fast-moving pips. So if we're on the pound yen and we have 2 to 4 pip candles and we end the move, there will be an impulsive move out of there. And if it's overly excited, you know, that impulsive move, it can move 4, 5, 6 pips. Now, you know, remind me of this question when we come to the next module or the next section of this module. I want to address that, but I don't want to address it fully here because I don't want to get into the next module just yet. Wow. So the question is, if the yeah, I'm going to state the question. If the trend line is broken in the indicator, you know, if you're using it as support, can it become resistance? And I have to say, in theory, yeah, but I haven't seen one. So I've not been looking for it. My RIS hasn't been tuned to look for it. But from a theoretical standpoint, I don't know why not. But once again, you should have a, for the most part, a shift in the direction of the move then at that point, which I would think everything would recalibrate, and it probably wouldn't happen, but I would think it could happen. So, candle close versus live touch. Bless you. So, the thing is, a lot of what's going to drive this is going to be covered in the next section. So let me look at my notes here. I want to make sure if there was anything else I wanted to cover on trend lines. So we talked about precision in the touch. We talked about the angles have to match the direction of price movement. No divergence unless you want to do that on your own. Please don't post any trades with divergence and say I use divergence to do this, because we're not going to teach it and support it in the group. So if you want to do it on your own, that's fine. But don't bring it to the group, please. Well, if you accidentally do it, that's a different story. If you didn't know that's what you were doing, because you didn't know you were supposed to have them going in the same direction, that's okay. But I'm not saying, I'm just saying if you're trying to trade divergence and you know you're trading divergence, and you're marking your charts up and talking about divergence, let's not bring that to the group. So one of the reasons, you know, we look at trend lines is to get these kinds of trades that occur frequently, where we don't have peak coming to extremes for the time frame we're trading. So it affords us more trades, essentially, is what happens. It gives us more trade opportunity. The other thing that trend lines do is it allows us to see opportunities in impulsive moves or steeper moves or smaller channel moves, if we can combine all those things together, where we can have stack trades instead of single trades. So what do I mean by that? If I have a move like this, and we talked about this last week, but there's been some instances where I need to kind of just review it. Let's have a trend, not even. a trend that looks like that versus a trend that looks like that. This is where geometry is at play. In both of these, the trade, from our system standpoint, is harmonic wave convergence, and it's going to be at the top. And I'm trying to draw these pullbacks aggressively. It doesn't matter how I draw them in terms of how aggressive. If they're, the more aggressive I draw it, the larger percentage, the more aggressive I draw them, not the percentage, the more this becomes visible. Let me put it that way. So if I were to look at these moves and say, well, if I'm measuring from down here to up here, what's my percentage pullback? And we can see, these can get pretty deep, right? If I could draw straight, maybe 78.6, maybe 88.6 in this range, maybe 68.5. Inside joke just for Josh. Okay. So, can I have those same in-depth retracements when I have an angle on my trend or my channel that's much steeper? And the answer is no, just by geometry. So, we move up impulsively, we have our harmonic wave convergence. We have our retracement, and even if it is fairly quick and aggressive, you can see that as a percentage of the move, it's much shorter. It can't go any deeper unless it's the channel breaker. So what this allows us to do is to stack trades that we feel comfortable with that we can't necessarily do over here. And by stacking a trade, what I mean is, as I enter this buy, I generally, would want to exit, as I've drawn it, here. Because I don't want to erode those pips in case it's the channel breaker. So I would exit there, and then I could re-enter a trade here. But that's another trade. This trade is gone. So I would make those pips, and then I would make those pips, and so on. Over here, from this buy here, I can stack these because in a logical sense, a normal 50% gain is not going to threaten my trade. So there's no need to exit at this point when it's only a 30% retracement. So I can enter that trade and then stack it, meaning I'm not going to exit that trade when I enter my second buy. And so, same deal. Price takes off, big accelerated move because this is the impulsive side of the move. It comes up here. I don't have to exit the trade. I'm just going to let it run. But now trade number one is running with it. And if I have a third opportunity on the pullback, then same thing once again. It's going to be a shallow pullback. And all the while, I could be moving my stop loss up 50%. So the difference is this don't make the mistake of not understanding the cumulative effect of stacking these trades. Because it depends on how many times this opportunity exists. Obviously, you have to have the channel established by 2 points, so I can't even draw the trend lines until I have 2 hits. But if I can get this, understand that this is not just trade 1 and this is trade 2. These are not equal trades. So what it allows you to do is put more time in looking for this type of trade, because when you get it, you're going to make 3 times the profit, 2 times the profit, or more, depending on how long it sustains itself, than you will over this type of trade. So trend lines and channels are not just trend lines and channels. The steeper it is, the narrower it is, the better. And if I could stack trades because my broker and or my country will allow it, and I have the leverage to have the margin tied up to allow me to do it, then this is a very profitable trade. So be on the lookout. You know, do I want to be messing with this kind of trade when these are available? Can I trade 1/3 the amount of time and make the same amount of money by trading just the super steep trades? Now you will get impulsive moves that are not really tradable, like, you know, FOMC today, for the most part, wouldn't have allowed too much of this buy into the sell opportunity. So the angle of the move is very significant. The advantage to looking for trend lines, even in trade number 1, and our indicator, is that we can indeed take trades when we don't have the indicator just routinely giving us extreme bottoms. So we have the opportunity to take trades when the bottoms are on a trend, and we can measure that. Once again, the steeper this, the more accurate the trend line down here is going to be. All right, any questions about anything we've covered with trend lines? I think I've covered all the questions that have come up. Oh, one last one. Well, I did it. I covered it. I talked about drawing multiple trend lines. What you'll find sometimes, guys, is, and again, you know, excuse my artistic license here, or interpretation. So you will get this frequently. And, you know, by the nature of how this is drawn, if this is just all that we're seeing and all that's possible to be seen, here is one bottom, and I eventually get to another bottom that then allows this to be a trade. Test, test. Nope, it looks good. Somebody said my audio is out, but it looks like it's broadcasting and I'm not muted. Can you hear me? Yep, okay. So, but don't let that lull you. You know, don't let your RAS affect your vision, because this is true. You know, remember, your vision is one of the big key components of RAS. Sensory, visual sensory information. So don't let your RAS get too out of whack. You want to see other opportunities. And so, you know, even before hit number 2 comes along, so I can draw this line and eventually get the trade down here at number 3, realize there's other trend lines there. And this is, you know, kind of important. Because it'll give you more trades, right? And this is why I say just draw trend lines, draw trend lines. So now I have this as a trade. Now I have this as a trade. So all of a sudden I'm getting 1, 2, you know, whoops, 1, 2, here's 2, and 3 trades versus 1. So that becomes a trade, and that becomes a trade, and here's our first trade. So be looking for those secondary ones. Now, the thing is, in this example, I made them kind of noticeable. But this trend line here could be much closer down to this line. And this trend line can be much closer down to this line. But don't get sloppy and assume that this is an acceptable trade based on the white trend line, because it's not. Again, back to the adage of close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Well, I've drawn it this way. It's a terrible depiction, because again, my RAS, when I draw, what I end up drawing is what I'm trying to prove, and I get sloppy with the rest of the drawing. Most of the time when you have this kind of move, these are, you know, these go to extreme or darn close to it. So I didn't mean to. Let me just clarify that before I go too much farther, because that's real sloppy on my part, and I apologize for that. You generally don't get the compression on both sides. The reason you get the shortage down here is because why? Because there's big upward pressure. And so whatever wave we're looking at can't push down. There's too much upward pressure. When there's upward pressure down here, it exists at the upper side too. So most of these times, these things are going to extremes, or like I said, real close to it. The shortage is at the bottom, so that's more properly drawn. Now, in the event that something didn't go all that high, okay, and it was shorter, and we notice the angles of one of these lines, I'll use one of the green ones. Can I affect the thickness? I can't affect the thickness. Let's use this one here. Yeah, it keeps climbing up. It kind of was negated or voided as we went downstream, but somewhere up here, for whatever reason, you know, this, what was a, you know, support line becomes a resistance line. That, in this particular case, that may be a that might be a technical reality, but remember, the overlying rule is your trend line has to represent the kind of move that you're trading in the direction that you're trading. So for the most part, as we've drawn this, we're looking for buys on the way up. As I've drawn it, I'm not sure what that would represent unless there was a reversal and price was already heading back down. But then we would be trading sells at the top. It's got to match. I mean, see, it's possible from a physical, technical appearance, but it doesn't make sense to what we're trading because we're trading buys in these upward sloping, as we've drawn it here. Because we're trying to catch what? The buy into the sell. These are your harmonic wave convergence trades. But they're the corrective side, meaning, you know, my price has moved up and now it's going to correct. So this is the convergence and here's the buy into the sell. Questions? I think we're looking good. Hold on. If established peak trend line and next move is short of trend line, can that be a trade or act as confirmation of a multi-wave signal? I'd have to see an example. See, I'm about stacking probabilities, as you're going to see in the next segment. I'm about stacking probabilities. And remember, peak 3 is supposed to be multi-wave on steroids. So, and peak 3 is supposed to clean up multi-wave. There will be times where they're used well together. I think, you know, multi-wave will show you, in some people it's just because of an RAS, because of use, frequency of use. Some people are more comfortable in seeing the retracements in multi-wave. They're more, you know, they're just familiarity. But I don't necessarily want to be trying to take a trade because TAB29 doesn't show it, but multi-wave does. That would kind of lean me away from the trade. I'd rather see them confirm each other, regardless of which one you use as the primary and which one you use as the confirmation, than I would be in a situation when they're in conflict or one is showing it and one isn't. And then, you know, it's one of those things, I'm looking to make a trade, but I don't keep looking and then find something that works and then exclude everything else. Hey, great, I went through 27 things. Oh, multi-wave is showing me a trade. I guess I'll take it. You know, because even though the other thing said not to. So it's, to me, it's not that kind of, they're not that kind of matched pair. But again, you know, here's the thing, guys. You know, and I've said this before about multi-wave. And to be honest, I think Brian was the first one that said it once we brought out multi-wave. There's so many possibilities of things that Brian and I can't possibly know them all. So some of you guys as traders will discover stuff. And so if you discover something, and I'm not interested in one trade, so go show it to me after it's happened 10 times. And then we want to say, hey, this makes sense. And then we can say, hey, can other people look for this? And then we say, hey, we're incorporating this into our training. Okay? The next part's really going to be powerful, Ross, so definitely come back and watch. Yeah, good luck on that, Zoe. All right, so let's jump right into the next part, because I think, to me, this is it in regards to trading. All right, so let me get my little thing together. Now, I'm going to leave some people behind here. And I think if you watch this over and over again and you continue working on your technical stuff and you continue to do your demo trades, you will prep yourself to be listen to what I'm saying here. Let me take a quick drink. It's not a physical second part. It's still the same part. I just have two topics in this one part. I may try and edit it, but oh my gosh, it's been a hassle for me lately. So what I want to talk about is, and this is a big part of the head game, okay, and it's your current RAS and how you filter stuff as a trader. So we're always on RAS. So it's going to be how you filter stuff as a trader. And I'm going to come down and say all of the hard work that stumbles old paradigm traders, all of the hard work that they try and figure out where to put in, but eventually stumble old paradigm traders, is already done for us in the new paradigm with our 310 stop loss. So I'm going to engage you today in a little discussion about risk, and I want you to open your eyes, open your mind to what I'm saying here so it filters in, because this is so significant. And I'm not just talking to newer traders. I even might have a little bit more emphasis of this to be absorbed by tenured traders. This is the game changer in trading. Now, again, nothing new. This has been done in pieces, in OCRs, in trainings, in Facebook over the last 2 years. But in bringing it all into one concise spot so you can see this and then watch it and watch it and watch it and absorb it, this is going to be a first, I believe. So let's go, and if you have questions, ask them along the way, just like you did with trend lines. So what I'm telling you is that all of the hard work has been done for you and resides in this. All you have to do is make this the foundation for your trading, and everything else will fall out of this. So here's the problem with the average trader. One, we use the term stop loss. And, when you get down to the Investopedia definition or a broker definition, that's going to be the price point you put inside a trade or inside your trading station to stop your loss when you're in a trade that's gone bad. So already we have this undertow, this hidden connotation that our subconscious hearing is bad trade. Now, if you followed what I've taught about RAS along the way and how things get filed in your subconscious, if your subconscious has filed away something as bad trade, do you think your subconscious is going to talk to your RAS and send it signals to help you find another bad trade? Or is it going to try and avoid those trades? Yeah, the heavy breathing is not me, that's Roxy. Your subconscious mind, your RAS, is going to try and help you avoid the bad trade because you've already put a signal to it. That's already an order to it. You've already exclaimed as captain of the ship that this is not a good situation. And you have the most loyal crew in the world in your subconscious. They love to please the captain. So if you label something just by the use of the word or the phrase, I got stopped out, boom, bad is automatically recorded. Bad trade is automatically recorded. Bad gets fed to your subconscious. Your RAS says, oh, next time I see those kinds of trades, I won't take them for you. I won't show you the good stuff about those trades. So we have a little bit of an issue with even phraseology that we bring over from the old paradigm, a stop loss and or I got stopped out, particularly in the start of a trade. We've tried to accommodate this as years have gone by talking about getting stopped out in a trade where we're 100 pips in profit. We're not getting stopped out. That's being profited out. Stopped out is, we should call those profit outlines, not stop out lines or stop loss lines. So we call the stop loss or I got stopped out, has that negative connotation to it. We then allow that to slide and to be interpreted or tagged or anchored to other things. Like when we look at a trade, anything with a minus in front of it automatically gets, well, I lost in this trade, I got stopped out, and therefore once again it's bad, and therefore once again our memory and our subconscious lock that in, and it's a trade our RAS and crew don't want to show us. So the problem we have is that somewhere along the line, and it might be our parents, it's always fun to use your parents as your excuse. Dallas, you didn't hear that. It's always fun to have your parents as the excuse, right? It was my upbringing. It's the way my dad was. It's the way my mom was. It's the way my grandma was. It could be school, our educational systems, Western world, most of the part, negative is just bad. Negative equals bad. And so the problem is our mind, based on our training, our environment, our nurturing, our growth, our life experience, what everybody else does, mom, dad, parents, coworkers, boss, school system, everywhere you look, negative is bad. And what happens in that process is the reality of this number is negated. It's minimized. It's like it has no relevance in this equation. In the equation of the totality of what you're saying there, -3, the only thing really validated by your brain, the only thing that gets recorded is the negative sign in front of it. It's overemphasized. And the way our mind works and our subconscious works is this all flows out then. It gets stored that way, and then when it comes time for the RAS to be engaged and to call on our memory in order to adjust the aperture on what it's going to allow us to see and not see, because there's too much sensory information for it to take it all in, so it has to filter it. So when it invokes the RAS, it has impact on us. So this is something we have to grow through or overcome as a new paradigm, as Shredder, as TAB29 traders. So today we want to talk a little bit about the significance of the 3. Okay? And with that, an understanding of something we've said many times, and that is you cannot forget scale in your trading. It is the go, no-go for trades, regardless of what your relative indicator may be telling you to do. Remember, the relative indicator actually doesn't tell you what to do. It just measures the condition. It gives you a general sense of something that's going to happen later on, i.e. subsequent to this pattern, this is what should happen with a high degree of predictability. But scale always has to be our first go-to check. The final decision for execution comes down to that relative indicator. Used to be just multi-wave, now it's TAB29 or multi-wave plus TAB29. That is the decision maker for execution. Scale is your screener. With that, we have to follow through. And the follow-through comes in the form of, been joking with this the last couple days. I need that big voice with the reverberator on it. So when I say this, I want to say it in that voice. And you've heard me say this the last couple of months. Do the math. When you do the math, you will slowly override the nurturing, the education, and the life experience that forced everything to focus on the minus sign in front of that negative, and instead will allow the significance of the 3 to come into play. So it's the secret, and I don't know what that is. I'm not trying to write Swedish or Norwegian or Finnish or whatever hieroglyphic. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. We have 2 things to consider in a trade. They will be determined by scale. They are automatically determined in part by the 310 portion of our system, which is why I said the work's already been done for you. And those things are odds, D's are just not my thing, and reward to risk. Now, I need to mention something about reward to risk. This is not a change in position, it's merely a clarification. I've always heard, if you've been around me any length of time, and for those, Lori's in the audience today, Tim's in the audience today, Zoe's in the audience today. So, some people that have been around, Michael's in the audience today, and people that have been around a long time. Mark's in the audience today, he's starting to get up there. You've heard me say, oh, old paradigm, risk reward, such myth, such legend, such BS. And I hold to that. Because let's look at what the old paradigm does. They have a trade. They can't get into it at the bottom because they have lagging indicators. So they finally get into this trade. And because of the distance from, in this case, the swing low, they have to go back and cover that swing low. And so there's their 100 pip stop loss. Or 50, or 185, or 148, or 200, whatever it is, depending on their time frame. And so what happens is their educator, their trading guru says, well, to protect you, and what they're really saying automatically when they say that is, the odds of us winning these trades are not that high. Because if the odds of winning these trades were high, they wouldn't have to protect you. So to protect you, i.e. from these vicious 100 pip losses, we're going to say, don't take this trade until what? Don't take this trade unless what? What are they going to say? Come on, somebody tell me what you were taught in the old paradigm. You're not going to take this trade unless what? This is the interactive part of the presentation. No, they're already here. They're already here. They're already pro-trend. They're not looking for reversals here. Yeah, Theo, exactly. 2 to 1, 3 to 1, right? We want you to have a 2 to 1, at least a 2 to 1. Some will say at least a 3 to 1, but that gets even more bogus. So 2 to 1 would mean this trade has to go 200 pips. Now here's what I love about traders in the old paradigm and being taught in the old paradigm. So you got a brand new trader that kind of know the system, that kind of finally learn what a stop loss is, and now their educator, their training guru, their trainer, their coach is saying, don't take this trade, I want to protect you, don't take this trade unless you got a 2 to 1 risk reward. So here's the thing, how can a trader tell me I have clear passage for 200 pips? I mean, first of all, you know, they're not using harmonic targets. In that 200 pip stretch, do we have a 55? Do we have an 89? Do we have a 144? Not always, but usually one of those, 2 of those. And do you know how often, if you have, you know, naked trading now, your lagging indicators aren't going to be any help to you. How many times, if you were looking at a chart naked, with the exception of, let's say, the 89 harmonic, how many times is price going to go through that 89? It will go through it sometimes. There'll be plenty of times it stops dead in its tracks and turns around, doesn't it? And not just for a quick 35 pips, but sometimes a complete reversal. Hey, but those aren't on the chart. They don't see them. They had 0 to 200. They might have, this might be their first, because it was brought over, somebody showed them some major swing highs and swing lows on a 4-hour chart or a daily chart, and this was a support level or a resistance level on that chart. So obviously nothing exists between their entry and that massive daily or 4-hour support. Hey, by the way, in addition to harmonic targets, did they see the 62 floating through there anywhere? Does the 62 ever bounce price? They're not using the 62 because they didn't come through Pip Club. Do they see Camarilla lines in a 0 to 200 pip range? Do they see Fibbo pivot lines? Do they see most of the 30-minute or 4-hour Fibbos, just straight retracements? Forget projections and all that stuff. So you're telling me this old paradigm trader who doesn't have any of these lines can tell me there's clear passage for 0 to 200, or worse, 0 to 300 if their guru says it's got to be 3 to 1. I will say BS. It's bogus. And the only reason they're going to find a support barrier or a resistance barrier at 200 or 300 pips is so they can take a trade, because they have to have 2 to 1. So they're not going to come in here and say, well, you know, this 89 that I don't see, it might bounce it. Oh, this 62 EMA that has a good chance of bounce, it won't bounce it. And I'm talking bouncing significant enough to take whatever stop loss they have out. Doesn't have to be a reversal of 200 pips back down, just enough to reverse it to go through their stop loss as they advance their stop loss. It's next to impossible. I guarantee you 9 out of 10 old paradigm traders cannot accurately predict a 200 pip stretch. If you know any that can, please put me in touch with them. I want to talk to them because they know more about support and resistance, and we've kind of focused on that as one of our mainstays through the years. So this is why when referencing the old paradigm and I talk about their risk reward and their, you know, it's bogus. I'll say risk reward is bogus because there's just no way there's any accuracy to this. However, when you reduce and lessen, I was trying to make that one word. When you reduce and lessen the scale, your risk reward is very accurate and very viable. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but it means it's accurate and reliable. So let's kind of tie some of this together. Let's take Stewart. had a little fun with Stuart. Stuart had a little fun with us. Stuart coming into last Tuesday, so the day before the training, Stuart was a bronze trader, just kind of a green bronze 2 at that, right? And the day before, I mean, we're 20 hours away from the start, and he's like, hey, Steve, do you really think I'm ready for this? Referencing TAB29. And I'm like, dude, you know, you're not silver. You're only bronze. Yeah, I would like to have another 60 days in front of this for you, at least. I'd like you to finish off bronze. I'd like you to go through silver. You'll be a little bit more adaptive to what we're doing, and some of the things I'm going to teach is massively profitable in TAB29. And so I said, but you know what it is? It is what it is. This is where you are today, and I'm teaching the class tomorrow. So you can either just wait till you think you're ready 60 days from now and watch the videos, or you can attend the class and just, you know, try not to get overwhelmed and get back on course with where you should be in your trading. Of course, you know, unfortunately, I built up the class so much, you know, hey, greatest and the most enhanced thing we have, multi-wave on steroids. You know, there was a little emotional appeal to it. So he wanted to go to the class. So anyway, I said, fine, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the going silver video and the adding trend bars to your charts video, and here's the links. Thank you, and he left. And the next time, I never talked to him since then. Okay. So I don't recall whether he was in the class all the time or whether he was working some of the time, but some of you saw his post on, so the class was Wednesday, so I think it was Thursday night, sometime my time. He makes a post, and he only does one chart. And I understand, you know, there's got to be some leeway. I mean, it wasn't, how would I say it? He wasn't bragging. He was in a shock and awe amazement, okay, based on as he was struggling as a bronze trader, as he was struggling to qualify a harmonic wave convergence as a 7, 8, 9, or a 10. As he was struggling, you know, is that really sliding in or not sliding? Is that lower level leading upper level or not? All right, all the stuff, you know, beginning, you know, early bronze 2 traders would go through. So he makes that chart post. Now remember, 48, 36 hours before that, he didn't know what trend bars were. He saw it on some of your posts. He didn't know what they were or how to use it. Okay. He didn't know what a fan retrace was. He didn't know what a buy into the sell or sell into the buy was. He didn't know what trend lines were. He had heard of them, but, you know. So he makes this post, and I'll try and summarize it the best I can, and excuse me if I get a few things inaccurate, but the genre, the general nature of what I'm trying to convey here holds. And what happened was he does that post, and he says, you know, I took 26 trades on this trend move, and trend lines on the chart. Now, he didn't do a fantastic job of marking up anything and really explaining all that he did. He just kind of put one chart with, you know, a major set of trends, but it was mostly 10-minute, 1-minute kind of stuff. And so he took 26 trades. And of those 26 trades, he said he had lost 10. Now, see, right out of the gates, and again, I'm not faulting him at all, because these are terms we all use and I've used from time to time. But right out of the gates, notice the negative connotation we put on the trades we're going to put in this side. Lost. Does that not kind of ring back to stopped out? Does that not kind of ring back to bad? Does that not kind of say, well, gee, what's our RIS going to be doing in the future, because we're storing this knowledge that these lost trades are stopped out and bad, and therefore, oh, yeah. Exactly. So let's talk about the lost. He lost 10 trades. Now, you know, I'm not trying to be defensive to the 10 losses. I will say they were a little bit more than normal, and I will also say this is the first time Stuart saw trend bars. This is the first time Stuart saw buys into sells and sells into the buys, and trend lines, you know, encapsulating a move. And so I would venture to say maybe 3, maybe even as many as 4 or more of these trades were trades that he just didn't do right once he was inside, or maybe he should have never taken them to begin with. Maybe, right? But I'm just going to run with his numbers. And those 10 trades that he lost, he went negative a total of 36 pips, which means he was averaging about 3.6 pips per loss. He won 16 trades. Now again, win versus loss. I don't know how we can do this because of where we're going with this. But if I'm going to just absolutely look at it from this old paradigm perspective of whether it had a plus sign or a negative sign in front of it, indeed it was 16 to 10, or he made 1.6 wins times the number of losses. Those 16 trades went, I think, 272 pips. When he subtracted out his losses, he ended up, I think, with 236 pips. And again, you know, plus or minus, don't get me wrong. Don't worry about it. Which means, when you do the math here, it's about 15 pips per win. So, what I'm saying here is, all the way at the top, the 310 part of our system has done all the hard work for you. You'll also note he did these 26 trades in 8 hours. I think he finished up with 20 or 30 minutes left. He used his night doing this in order to finish up and get ready to go to work. So he just got started and he kind of got addicted. He was in the zone, so he kept trading, right? So you'll also note, if you do the math, with 10 pips, with 2% to a 10 pip stop loss, this would have been a 46% return. Was there any of those big pound yen trades that go for 300 pips included in this? No. These were 10-minute trades. He didn't achieve 15 pips per win because he had a couple of 150 pip trades in there and they balanced out all the ones and twos. That's not what this was. This is pretty much a good statistical average. And so what you want to look at is this, first of all, 1.6 to 1 in terms of outright win the losses. Normally, what I'm going to tell you, as an advanced trader, you're probably up around 2.5 to 1. As a, you know, high-end silver, just kind of recently there, you know, you might be 2 to 1. But it's not about that. It's about this. 15 pips per win, 3.6 pips per loss. That is a 4 to 1 profit to risk ratio. In order for that to be achieved in that old paradigm with the trader with the 100 pip stop loss, he would have had to get clear to 400 pips. Now, I don't know the details. I haven't actually talked to Stuart. And no offense to his quick mastery of TAB, I would guess, as all of us might have been in these kinds of situations before, he probably had, as a trader, he probably had a little dumb luck. And I don't mean on the actually execution of his trades. I meant on the sequence for which his wins and losses fell out. I would venture with his 16 wins and 10 losses, he probably won 1 or 2 trades. Here's a trade for 22 pips. Here's a trade for 17. Next thing you know, he's at 33, 35 pips. A -3 is insignificant. Another -3 is insignificant at that point. He already went through that gateway where he realized that -3 is the gateway to get what's on the other side. Babe Ruth had to get the strikeouts to get the home runs. It can't be viewed in the context of the old paradigm trader who gets stopped out, because when they get stopped out, it was for 100 pips. It was for, 148 pips. I showed you that 4-hour study from IML. 13 trades, 148 pip stop loss average for all of them. Those are stop outs. And the reason the negative connotation is associated with them, because if I get stopped out for 148 pips, I got to make 148 pips just to get back to break even. It's not about this being a 2% loss. The reason it gets magnified in the trader's mind is because of the actual absolute value of the loss. Not in terms of percentage of the account, in terms of pips and how that scares you. Because now I wake up today after a loss last night, oh God, I got to make 148 pips before I even start making a penny today. So the negative gets stored, in this case, as it should. But it doesn't help the trader. We don't have that. When you make a trade and it's either not the right trade or you messed up in it or however it goes down and it's -3 or -3.6, excuse me, 1 4-pip trade and you're back to break even. You cannot allow these two to represent the same thing. You can't allow the 148 pips, which has this stopped out, bad, negative connotation which affects your RAS. You can't allow that same thing to happen with 3.6 pips. So let's take all of this now and put it on top of the technical knowledge that you already have. And let's talk about some situations. Okay? Some situations. And you'll see how some things kind of like fall into play. Now, we've already talked about one extensively. And that is in a snake in the grass or a retracement. The snake is just so much easier to use because it's clear to see from the start. When we have a fan retrace off of that and we're entertaining, let's say a buy into the sell. So this is we come up here for the convergence, and we have the 10-minute wave, let's say, pull back. So we've got a snake and the 10-minute wave is pulling back. We talked about the ABC involved in that, which is typically drawn as a zigzag. And we talked about this first trade here, if down below in multi-wave, this has gone to an extreme. So let me just copy this over. So I have my convergence. I have my 10-minute wave converge, and now it's pulling back. I'm not going to draw these all out. Just draw a handful of them, or a few of them. And we get the 1-minute wave that comes back and converges. So we have our fan. And we talk about this being the buy into the sell entry. And the teaching then says, we don't know whether this is the A or the C here. We know when the C goes, when the C goes, it's going to go. And it's going to go impulsively usually. And so we take this trade not knowing whether it's the A or the C, just in case it's the C. So if this goes to the higher high, we want to catch those pips. But it very well may be the A. And when that happens, we're going to get stopped out, but it's going to come to a lower low, which will now be the C. And we say, hey, this first trade at the AC, we don't know what it is. We took it. We went -3. Down here, when it is the C, we definitely want to take that trade. So if I'm going to take trade number 1, I have to take trade number 2. We know that as a set, the first and second trade will get to the higher high 95% of the time. Well, at least a double top, but usually to the higher high. So if I don't get the A, C one, then for sure, let me catch the C. And I want to hold in all my trading to make it worthwhile at the short-term level. I want to make sure I have a 2-to-1 reward to risk. So at the C, if I've already gone -3 in my first trade at fan number 1, I have to take trade number 2 at fan number 2. Wow, what a bad artist. Because they're married. The last thing I want to do is take trade number 1, go -3 and walk away, get all butt hurt and cry, be the trader snowflake that one can be, and not come back and take trade C. At the C, take trade number 2. Because that's when we have our higher percentage to pay off. And the reality is, at 2, not only do I have the -3 that I had in my first stop out, but I'm also risking 3 more. So at the point of C, if I took the first trade at 1, at the point of C for trade number 2, I essentially have 6 pips locked up in this thing. So if I'm going to get 2-to-1 at point C, I need the entirety of this pullback to be at least 12 pips. Because getting back to a double top up here would then be a 12 pip gain. And if I'm going to be 12 pips down here at point C, again, statistics, numbers, averages, I need at least an 8 or 9 at the AC point right here. So this is forced risk reward per trading guidelines. Don't take this first fan right here unless I have 8 or 9 pips in the pullback. The rest is the math. If I miss it, it's going to retrace some, it's going to come down some. It normally extends itself about in that ratio. And so I want that 12 pip pullback. So 2-to-1 will give me at least 12 pips back up. I'm risking 6 pips at this point. So all that's been done for you. And by the way, as a side note, I want to point out that some more of this stuff has been done for you. We know that, and I'm going to erase this in a second, we have to understand, as I said, that this is a snake or a retracement. So we have a validated convergence here, and we have a snake or a retracement, and so we know this is a correction. And most of the time, the corrections that we're going to see come in the form of an ABC. On the positive side, on the other side, if we have a reversal, we're not looking for an ABC, we're looking for a 1-2 move. So from the convergence, we pull back to a 1, we go back to the 2. And we talk about this 2 potentially going all the way back here, which is why I have our stop loss 1 pip below it. The 2 can come all the way back to the origin of the 1 wave, very often referred to as X. So X to 1, 2 can come all the way back. We also know that by statistics, the vast majority of the time, that pullback is 50 to 61.8. It can go 78.6, can go 88.6, can go 99.999. We also know that it has to pull back at least 20%. We have a pretty big range, but in the 50 to 60 area, we have a very, it's narrower, and that's where almost all of the reversals to 2 will occur. In an ABC, the same statistics will show that the B, the same majority of time, is a 38% retracement of wave 1. Of wave A. So much shallower. And it has to be at least 30% of a retracement to qualify as a B. So much tighter zone. You know, if we have a 10 pip pullback, 30% is 3, 38% is 4. So we have a, a 1 pip zone in there for which most of the time we're going to see where the B is. Which is why, duh, the math has already been done for you. We talk about what happens when you have a 5 pip pullback. You should allow what? At least 2 pips of pullback, of a hookback, before you exit the trade. Why is that? Well, if this is a correction, right, and I'm getting in here in a very tight move, 5 pips, right, or, this is allowing, if I'm in the sell up here at the convergence, why I want to allow at least 2 pips of pullback is for the B to form in the event that this is going to be a correction instead of a retracement, a correction instead of a reversal. Because why? Why would I allow 2 pips? What's 38% of 5? Or better said, just round it up. What's 40% of 5? 2. Which is also why we say scale it up. If it comes down to a 10 pip pullback, you better allow at least 4 pips of pullback. Because what? What's 38% of 10? 3.8. So in our absolute numbers that we've used as examples, we already include the Elliott wave studies, which have shown where the preponderance of B waves show up. All right, that's just a little side note so everybody understands the difference between a 1-2 move and an A-B move. Now, from a technical perspective, it is true that they have the same structure. It's just how that structure spans itself out. They do have, the 1 wave has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 2 wave is typically an ABC. In the ABC move, the A move is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the B move is an ABC. Likewise, the 2 to 3 move over here in the reversal is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 3. And over here, the B to C move is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they look a little the same. 5 wave, 3 wave, 5 wave. 5 wave, 3 wave, 5 wave. But the amplitude of those waves and the pullbacks will, when you look at predominance and averages on those predominances, they're significantly different. The B wave is much shorter and a much tighter range. The bigger difference being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for reversals and ABC for retracements. All right, so let's come back to the concept of, in the ABC example, all the math is done for you, and it's kind of been turned into, all you have to do is ensure that you don't take a fan retrace or a buy and a sell, as I've drawn it. You don't take one of those entries unless you have at least 8 pips of pullback, because the scale is not, the total numbers, the math is not in your favor when it's less than that. You'll end up with something less than, the ideal 2 to 1. Any questions on that? So now I'm going to show you how most traders ignore all that and are overwhelmed by emotion, and they become Captain Kirk instead of staying Mr. Spock, i.e., they're not 100% logical. When you do the math, the great advantage of doing the math, understanding the math, and then enforcing and executing the math is it totally minimizes your emotion. So do the math is a big thing because it's going to impact your future trades. All right, so don't be, here's my summary, but I got more to say. Don't be so literal. Don't be so type A. Don't be so OCD. I've joked with sarcasm about not being able to give you the 50,000 page document that describes how to trade Shredder in the new paradigm. Couldn't give it to you all at once because you'd be like, wow, overwhelming. And so when I put stuff out there, and I mentioned this in the training, you know, in conversation one day with Mark said, hey, you know, some of these things, some of these rules where there's, you know, here's possibility 1, 2, and 3 for that rule, maybe instead of calling it a rule, because that's only going to help, you know, the OCD, the type A, the literally interpretive traders, that's only going to help them see it as a hard, fast rule. Instead of calling them rules, call them criteria, call them guidelines. So the problem is some traders, now remember, I started off the TAB29 trading, guys, with a list of attributes that it takes to be a successful trader. That wasn't lip service, that wasn't just rhetoric, that wasn't, or what's the better, hyperbole. That was observation for 12 years of coaching thousands of traders. And the reality is those attributes have to be there in order for there to be eventual success. So if you have shortages, you need to work on it. Kind of interesting, I had a trader today, just out of the blue, say to me, you know, one of the things I have on my to-do list that I'm going to start working on is learning how to use Excel, you know, a spreadsheet. Don't know all the reasons yet. I'm going to trust you, but I'm going to learn how to do it. So, real positive, guys. You know, he saw that checklist of attributes. He wants to be a successful trader. Trust me, he's put in the work to get there. He wants to be a successful trader, and he's trusting me that that attribute of being able to use a spreadsheet is important. And you might say, why is that? And I started matrixing out some stuff that you can do with that spreadsheet. I could track my wins and losses. I could track my wins on 30-minute, 10-minute, 1-minute trades. I could track my wins on, you know, certain circumstances within those. I could track them against currency pairs. See, the problem with a lot of traders is they think they can get to a level of success, and that's good enough. And for some of them, it might be. But let's say you get to, pick a number, you know, 46% return per month, and you're averaging that out, you know, kind of in that ballpark month after month after month. Does that mean you really couldn't be doing 75 or 80 or 90 or more? Maybe you could tweak some things. Maybe you could stop that pair at the 10-minute level because it has 90% of your minus threes. So there's lots of things you can do with spreadsheeting, and I'm not going to go through all the examples of stuff that an advanced trader would do as time moves on. So anyway, those attributes are important, and one of them is do the math, right? So let's look at a couple situations here and evaluate them. I gave you one last week in the training itself, and it was this very, you know, kind of, it occurs frequently, and it is, you know, it's an emotional trade scenario that, you know, if you're not careful, it can get the better of you. And that is this particular scenario. I have now we're looking at peak 3, or we're looking at, you know, we're looking at TAB29, which would be the trend bars plus the various peaks in here. But let's say I'm looking at this on a 1-minute chart, and I have the power 10 come down to a convergence point, and it's taking off. And it looks like that. Yikes. Let me shorten this up a little. And, you know, we have our 1 minute peak 3, and I'm just going to go extreme to extreme. We're not going to worry about if they were short or not. Roxy. Maybe draw this yellow a little. Okay. So we're like that. So what's going on here? What's going on here? Is this converging? Well, I'll tell you what, I'll make this even a little better, because this was essentially the scenario these traders were facing. There was a 30-minute convergence that was then essentially snaking. So who can tell me what's happening at this point in time? And I'll answer it in advance, because if you can, you're going to be one of the next coaches. With nothing else on the chart, you can't tell what's happening there, because there's two things that can be happening. There's two possibilities. One, the 10-minute wave is retracing on this 30-minute snake, and it has reached its retrace exhaustion point and is now headed back down. Yeah, I meant that to be thinner. And is now headed back down to a reconvergence with that 30-minute wave. Okay. The other thing it could be doing is, indeed, it's retracing against the 30-minute wave, but the retracement may be strong enough that it actually comes up and converges. So we actually go 10-minute extreme to 10-minute extreme. Both of these paths are viable. You don't know there's pressure to the downside here. Nothing being demonstrated to exert that. All these waves are, you know, the peak 3s are the same levels. The power 10 is just, it's close to. Might be 5 points away. You know, who knows? So there's path number 1, which is, you know, continues to harmonic wave convergence. And there's path number 2, which in terms of this position here, it reverses to harmonic wave convergence. And quite frankly, so what I did last week in the TAB29 training was put up 2 traders submitted trades that were side by side. I think they were coming down to the bottom instead of going to the top. But nonetheless, side by side, same situation for both traders. And, you know, in one, they were assuming this trade was going to go down. And the second one, well, actually, they both took this trade. They both took this trade right here when the 1-minute wave got to its extreme. One of them got the trade, and the other one got stopped out. So here's what you have to do in order to take this trade. Remember, one got it, one didn't. Both of them had the same scenario. And that's true. I mean, man, have I been caught in this so many times, and it's only where your RAS is that depends on how you see this. If your RAS is thinking retrace, 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 retrace exhaustion, i.e., I might look up above and see this as a fan retrace, and my RS is totally focused that way, I'll forget about the fact that this might be a little blurb until it comes down and goes up higher, and i.e., my 1-minute wave may just come down like this and then go back up and converge. And in fact, sometimes you'll even be misled that way or led in that direction for thinking, because these last few waves may even be shorter, which would make you think there's pressure upward. And so, oh, this wants to go higher? Well, no, it's pulling away from that, so we're done. You know, it's a little confusing. So they got mixed results. One got the win, one got the stop out. Neither one did the wrong thing. They both entered this trade. So what's the missing ingredient in this trade? What do I need to know? They both took this trade. If you were in this position and this is what you saw, would you take this trade or not? Thank you, Tim. You're giving me the final answer. Thank you, Richard. You're giving me the generality. What you need to know is back up here in the right-hand corner. What are we looking at here with this trade? We're looking at the relative indicator. What do we really need to know before we can determine whether this is viable or not? Scale. i.e., in price, what is the distance from the last harmonic wave convergence at the 10-minute level and the 30-minute level to wherever we are now in price at this point here? Because I should be able to see that, just like in the ABC, when the C ends, I should be able to see that same down to this convergence point, minimally to a double bottom, or a price point that's somewhat equal to the previous low. Hopefully it's going to go past it. It can't go past it in the indicator, but in the price field. So on this move, let's pick a number. Let's say at this point up here, we've moved 15 points from this convergence. So I can see my way down, back down to convergence at 15 points at a minimum. Now, is that right or wrong? If I'm correct in this being the retrace exhaustion point right here, i.e. this is the path we're really taking, the retrace has exhausted itself and we're going to reverse here and come down to harmonic wave convergence. If I'm right, I should see myself back down to this convergence point. So, i.e., if I win, it's 15 pips. What am I risking if I lose? It's the same thing every time, which is why our system's pretty powerful. It's the same thing every time. It's just 3 pips. So if I lose, it's -3. Which means when I look at ultimately these two added together, my relative indicator saying I have a trade, the scale saying I have the distance, I end up with a reward to risk of 5 to 1. And I will tell you this. What is, if you had to assign, just with the knowledge you have that I've just presented, if you had to assign a probability of a win versus a loss here, what would you give it? With what I've drawn, and this red dot being short of convergence, and from this red dot it might just come on back up to converge here, or it might traverse down and reconverge at the bottom, I dare say we're probably 50-50. I can't put it any more than that. In terms of the odds of winning or losing, it's got to be 50-50. So what we end up with is a trade where I have 50-50 odds of winning or losing. But my risk reward is 5 to 1. Let me tell you this, guys. That is a trade I will take all day long, 7 days a week. Let me make a deal with you. Let me see who's here I'll have some fun with. Tim Phillips. Let's play a game. We're going to grab a quarter. We're going to flip it. If it's heads, you owe me $5. If it's tails, I owe you $1. How many times do you want me to flip the coin? Interesting thing. Let's say I flipped it tails, pick a number, 5 times in a row. Do I stop the game? See, the thing we know about 50-50, and especially been clinically or scientifically proven, with mechanical tests on coin tosses, the things we know is the bigger the volume, the closer we get to the stated percentages. Because it's 50-50 doesn't mean we won't get 10 wins in a row or 7 losses in a row. The odds are equal. I talk about trading in conflict. It's about the guy that does buy the big, Powerball or Mega, whatever it is, lottery ticket, and he buys it 5 times in a row, and he loses each the 5th time, and he goes, the 6th time, he says, man, this is crazy. I'm just not going to buy that anymore. Well, the reality is the odds of him winning the 6th time are the same time it was the 1st time. And the 2nd time and the 3rd. The odds don't change just because you have 1 more win or 1 more loss, or 2 more wins or 3 more wins or 4 more losses. It doesn't change the statistical odds. And over a volume of trades, be that 50 or 100 or 200 trades, you'll get closer in that coin toss that I'm doing with Tim Phillips, we'll get closer to 50-50. The difference is I have the 5-to-1 difference in payout. So when I'm at the top of this trade and I got a 15 pip channel and I essentially have one path I could take or the other, and again, look, we can only measure so much. I understand there's more considerations, and some of those we might be able to scientifically look at, some of we can't. But we got to put this in, take it a little, take the abstract and make it somewhat finite. So the reality in this particular case, I have about a 50-50 odds. Thank you, Tim. So why wouldn't I take this trade no matter what? See, if we take this further then and look at what happens, what are choices? Well, I don't want to take the trade. I'm going to wait and see if it comes up here and converges. Next thing you know, you're halfway down this channel and you're 7-8 pips into the move downstream. It's too late to get in that trade. So not taking it just cost you 15 pips. The other thing, by taking this trade and being wrong, well, now you know you're going to get the 15 pips. This is like the BC, or the AC and the C. When it finally does converge, you know where it's going, down the other side. Oh, yes, I know, it can snake and blah, 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 blah. But we're talking about statistical mean, bell graph. This is just a no-brainer. But what happens is people take this trade, it ends up continuing up to maximize the retrace extreme. It the retrace, it maximizes the retrace exhaustion point at extreme. It happens to be a convergence, and they go -3, and again they get all butt hurt. I don't know about this stuff. TAB29 was supposed to be multi-wave on steroids, and they walk away from the charts. And next time it gets here, what do? Ha, not going to fool me again, Mr. Chart. I'm not taking that trade. I know what happened to me last time. Well, there you go. Somebody's done the math. If you lost 83 out of 100, you're still in profit with 5 to 1. Well, I can tell you it's not 83 and 17, you know, or in that range, whatever it is, 85, 83. I can tell you it's not, you know, in that range that you're going to lose. So this is a trade you want to take. And oh, by the way, when you take it and it goes to the bottom, well, now you have another trade. You made 15 down, you're going to go there. This guy that waited, when it goes to the bottom, he can take that trade. It's a convergence. That's what he wants, is waiting for it at the top. He'll take it here. It's just he doesn't get the 15 pips on the ride down. So in this case, if you take it and lose, and it goes and converges and you take that trade, you're going to make up the -3 that you had. And you're going to end up down here with whatever, 12 pips and another opportunity for a trade. The -3 is nothing here. It's not some big emotional stop out to take you out of the game. It's not a stop out just because it has a negative in front of it. It's not a stop out, guys. Don't look at it that way. It's a gateway to the bigger pips. So if you view it as a stop, well, yes, it is. It's a stop loss. You put in the trading, you know, blah, blah, blah. You call it a manual stop loss. You know, don't give me that crap. Serious. I'm not going to deal with this stuff anymore. I'm tired of exceptions. I want to go what happens most of the time. So we don't want to call it a stop out mentally because our brain will automatically digest that as bad, and that automatically adjusts our RIS to take these trades away from us, which with a 50-50 over time gives us great profit at 5 to 1. Now just remember, in this little dinky run of 15 pips, at 5 to 1, at 15 pips, you earn 3%. Let's go back to that old paradigm trader with the 100 pip stop loss. He has to be clear sailing to 300 pips with no legging down to make that same, oh, excuse me. Yeah, he has to get to 300 pips to get the same 3% with nothing stopping him in between. So I don't want to do the comparisons too much because it's not the point. It's not, oh, Ludi-doo, we're so much better. That's not what it's about. It's about how you process a trade. And if you look at risk reward before you take the trade, what you're doing is saying, I understand the probability here, and I understand I can win or lose, and I will accept either one, and I will continue to take this trade for a volume of times because it's set up with the math to work. Let's look at another example. So this was one we kind of included last week, but I just wanted to bring a little bit more clarity to in terms of we have to look at the risk reward in this to really get a good handle on what's going on. Now, this is one that has some interesting, points to it. And I'll tell you this, from today forward, I'm going to lose some traders because they're going to get frustrated with what I put them through. And that's only because they haven't gotten far enough through their trading yet. And by that, what I mean is, as bronze traders who are now here and silver traders who are now here, you probably go, holy smokes, Steve sure taught us a lot of stuff and now he's changing his mind. Don't trade impulsive moves. Don't trade channels that are less than 10. Don't trade big candles, right? That's only if you're chasing harmonic wave convergence. Give me some narrow channels that are almost vertical and TAB29, and I'm going to show you a whole bunch of pips. So as you move forward, and again, I can't give you that 50,000 page PDF on day one. So, but what I'm doing is, if you're sitting in this class or you're watching this video, you kind of either earned your way here or you paid your way here. And either way, no more kid gloves. This is the real deal of trading now. So I'm only going to tell you the stuff the way it is from here on out. If you're a little green in this area, then yeah, you have some catching up to do. You need to make some, you got to watch those silver trades. You got to post silver trades and get corrected on what is a fan retrace and what isn't. When is it appropriate? When isn't? And you'll have to catch up. Or take me for my word here and just do exactly as I say and watch the math. So I have another example. So here we have a trader with a pitchfork. This could be any trader. And a couple of things. Let's say this is on a 10-minute chart. And let's say the entire pitchfork on my 10-minute chart is 25 pips wide. Upper parallel to lower parallel. And I have some performance like this. Good old Alan was right, Mr. Andrews. We had that 80% chance of getting to the median, and it actually went past it and came back and checked. All right, so 10-minute chart, 10-minute chart, and Andrews was right. It comes back from the swing high to the swing low. We know there's all sorts of Fibonacci-ness in these lines because these swing highs and swing lows are determinate from previous retracements, projections, extended retracements, expansions, etc. So these lines are just glowing with Fibonacci-ness. So Andrews was right. Got to actually went past it, came back and checked it, went up, and tested it. Comes back down, nice bounce off the median, and comes back up, and this time it breaches it. Comes down, goes through the median, no check, just to the opposite side down here. Comes back up, and makes its way, and here it is right now. And when it's right here, we're getting a signal that we're just a tad inch away from a 10-minute convergence with inside peak 3 in tab 29. Now, I'm on my 10-minute chart, so here's the rest of the setup. I look at the scale on the right, nice 5-pip channels between charcoal and black. Most of the candles on the chart are 2 to 4 pips. Most of them in the field of view of my pitchfork. I don't have lots of wicks, so few wicks. I don't have any really steep trends because guess what? This trade is going to be what? This is a harmonic wave convergence trade. So I'm looking for a 10-minute harmonic wave convergence trade. Few wicks. The trend that moved there, and maybe I should have spread this out a little, but let's just go with me. It wasn't steep. So everything's looking pretty cool, and I've got a normal tab 29 trade on my 10-minute chart, except I'm benefited by the pitchfork. So let me ask you a question. Let's assume when we're just one little, paper thin stretch away from actually tagging that line. If it does tag it and it starts to pull back, what are the odds that it's actually going to be a bounce? And second part of that question, if it does bounce, where is it going? So I want answers to that. What are the odds it's going to bounce? And where is it going if it does bounce? Come on. There's more of you in this room. No, I'm showing harmonic wave convergence in tab 29. So I'm getting all sorts of answers, 80, 20, 90, 10, etc. Would you agree that this is at least a 50-50 chance of it bouncing versus it pulling back 2 pips and overrunning the pitchfork? Right? At least 50%. It could be much more. We had all these great touches to the median, but then again, on the line that we're looking at, this upper parallel, I have one that bounced nicely and one that didn't. So this was a nice yes, and this was a nice no. So I don't know if that automatically makes this entire line 50-50. If I want to look at these other things and say, yeah, but this was a perfect Andrew's observation, Andrew's observation, Andrew's observation. It did go to the top from here, down to the bottom, and, you know, so we stack it all. I don't know. But I do know this. This bounce is at least a 50-50 chance of it going. I don't want to get that technical. Is it, you know, is it traditional? Is it best fit? The performance of the pitchfork is all I'm looking at. And yes, only a couple of you answered this. If it does bounce with that 50-50 odds, where's it going? Most likely to the median line. Doesn't mean it has to, but again, statistically, this is what Andrew says is going to happen. So now here's what happens. It bounces. I'm looking down at my peak 3, you know, tab 29 indicator, and the 10-minute wave has pulled back some. It's hooked back. It pulls back 2 pips, and 3 of the 6 trend bars have flipped colors. It pulls back 3 pips, almost 4, and all 6 of them are pulled back. Roxy, chill. It's just Alice. It's pulled back 3 or 4 pips, and the trend bars have finally all converted to red. So my peak 3 is hooked back, my trend bars are all red, but the candle's still moving. And it doesn't close until 7 pips. So you have to do the math in front of all this. If it's 7, 7.5 pips here, and I've got a stop loss, a pip on the, or 2 pips on the other side of the trend line, let's just say 1, on the other side of the pitchfork, I'm already 8 pips into a trade that whose potential might go 12 pips. There's no risk reward in that for me. I don't want to take that chance. So, and I forgot to say on this 10-minute chart, the reason this candle went 10 pips or 7 pips, oh, let's just call this the pound yen. So we had a little bit harder bounce. Even though most of these candles were 2 to 4 pips, the convergence was so strong and the turnaround was so strong, it just acted impulsively and it moved out 7 pips. So do we wait for this candle to close to secure the bar flip? No. Because if I do, I'm taking myself out of the trade. And I could give up the pips. What did we used to do before tab 29 came along? We would see convergence anywhere near this pitch. I'm a pitchfork trader. I can take this by itself, by the way. But if I'm a pitchfork trader under the shredder label, I can use harmonic wave convergence to confirm that this is a likely place for this thing to reverse. So I would wait, what, 2 pips and enter this live. Don't let tab 29 in scale, when you evaluate the math, take you out of trades that are favorable to you. That is a misapplication of the guidelines. So 2 pip pullback here, live trade. We've already said it's 50-50. If I get in here at a 2-pip pullback, what's my stop loss now? 3. What is my risk reward? 4-1. This is a super trade to take live with the 2-pip pullback. Yes, TAB29 offers additional security against a -3. It shouldn't take us away from a trade whose risk reward is good and the probabilities of that trade are at least 1-1. In this case, it might be much higher. That might be 80-20. It might be 75-25. But at worst case, we should see it as 50-50. I very well may see those trend bars flip at 2 or 3 pips on the live candle. Take the trade. You got the trend bars to flip in 2 or 3 pips. It just didn't close. Take the trade. You've got 4-1 risk reward. It's pretty simple. See, we've got this fixed. We don't base our stop loss like they do in the old paradigm with their supposed understanding of support and resistance. They just blindly try and cover the previous swing low or swing high in their trade. And depending on how accurate and whatever time frame they're on with their lagging indicators, that might be a 50 pip stop loss, it might be a 185 pip stop loss. It's random. And therefore the gain they need is also random. For us, our stop loss is fixed. With rare exception, we don't, we're not going to expand that or decrease it. It's fixed, guys. It's just 3 pips. And so all we have to look at in our trades is the probability and the scale. How much, if I go and it wins, how much am I really going? This is why in the ABC, we rule out anything less than 8 or 9 pips. I personally use 10 pips as my guideline. If I have a 5 or 7 pip pullback, I don't take that trade. I don't care how beautiful. The fan could be on the cover of Time magazine as fan of the year. I'm not taking it because the risk reward is not in my favor. So trading at this point comes down to we have something already done for you. The hard work has already been done for you. The 310. Now look, if this is on a 4-hour chart, or excuse me, if this is on a 30-minute chart, guys, now pay attention to this. If this is on a 30-minute chart, and because watch the math here. If this is on a 30-minute chart instead of 10, and my 30-minute channel is 60 pips wide, the entire chart. That's kind of shallow for a good 30-minute fork. I mean, I know some of them end up that way, but that's kind of shallow. Let's just say that's what it is. Everything else lines up the same. Nothing else in the criteria other than maybe I have 10 pip channels, charcoal to black. And you know what? I kind of went too far with my example. I kind of went too far. Let's keep it on a 10-minute. And let's just say it was a 60 pip channel, because that has happened some. It's a little small for 30, but it might be a little on the larger side for 10. So we're still looking for 5 pips, black to charcoal. And we'll keep it on the 10-minute over here. So we'll say it stays on a 10-minute chart. All right. So everything else remains the same here, because I wanted to make sure that was the same. We have 2 to 4 pip candles for the most part. We still have few wicks, no steepness. And same trade opportunity, same pitchfork and same trade. It's just this pitchfork is 60 pips wide. Can I put the added protection that TAB29 provides me at play in this example? And the answer is yes. Watch this. So I have my candle hit and bounce at 2 or 3 pips. The peak 3 shows its reversal in the indicator below in TAB29. At 3 to 4 pips, all the trend bars flip, and the candle moves down and closes at 7. I can take the trade. Because now, from upper parallel to median is 30 pips. My stop loss is now 7. I actually have greater risk reward here than I did in the previous example. It's still 4 to 1. So what is, and here's the important part. We used, upper right hand corner, the same feature in this trade, 310. What does that really mean? 10 is a profit vehicle. We have 2% into a calculated 10 pip stop loss in trade calc to determine the number of lots to trade. Which means what? Every 10 pips we're still making 2%. The size of our stop loss is only about the risk in the trade. It has nothing to do with the profitability in this sense because we're using this as a manual stop loss. This is not a calculated stop loss. Remember, in the old paradigm, that guy with the 150 pip stop loss, that's his trading stop loss. ESL, MSL, all the same thing. That's the thing in his trading station, and he doesn't take himself out before then. So we reduce our risk over that kind of situation because generally we're taking ourselves out in the first third of our 2%, only risking 0.6 or 0.67 or whatever it comes out to be. But the profit doesn't change. It's still 2% every 10 pips. So over here, even though I increase the size of my stop loss, not calculated, the calculated is still 2% to 10 pips. So I'm still making 2% every 10 pips this thing goes. That profit vehicle, because of the 310, hasn't changed one bit, whether I'm in here with a 3 pip stop loss or a 7 pip stop loss. So I can have the 7 pip weight and still take that trade and have greater than 4 to 1 risk reward because if it goes, I'm getting 30 pips. I just got in the trade late. Anyway, so what I want you to get out of all this today is that quit looking at trades in terms of winning and losing. That's the first thing. It's not that. You have to understand it's about winning, and to get to winning, I have to go through the gate that is sometimes a -3 when I open it. It also means in terms of how you manage the trades. You have to manage you have to do the money management the same way each trade, in that same circumstance each trade. Why? Because when you have probabilities, and they at the worst case scenario, they reduce themselves to 50-50. What you're saying is, in one of these moves, I'm going to win, and in one of them, I'm going to lose. So let's say I use money management strategy number 1. Now think of this as the coin toss I was doing with Tim Phillips, head or tails. Heads, he's going to pay me $4. Tails, I'm going to pay him $1. Remember what we said about what happens here. It doesn't matter if either one of these is +3, -3, +7, 7. It doesn't matter how the sequence falls out. Over a volume of trades or over a volume of coin flips, be it 50 or 100 or whatever, eventually we're going to be 50-50 on heads and tails. The difference is the 5-to-1 reward risk or 4-to-1 reward risk, because I've drawn it this time $4 instead of 5. We're both still 50-50 in the amount of times we win or lose. I just have a higher payout. And we're going to get to this balance closer what? With a volume of trades. So here's the mistake traders make. They forget about this. If you've done the probability and you look at your trade and honestly ask yourself as part of that pre-check trade list or pre-trade checklist, I'll get it out right, as part of that pre-trade checklist, if I say, what are my odds of winning this trade? What are my odds of losing this trade? And when I say winning, I mean, what are my odds of getting to whatever reward I'm thinking? Maybe it's a target. It might not be the whole enchilada. Maybe it's just, to the first target. What are my reward to risk? And the probability of getting there. If it's 5-to-1, it's 50-50 and greater than 2-to-1, you should take that trade all day long. Nonetheless, the benefit we get because this -3 is so dang small, it's so easy to get 4-to-1, 5-to-1, 7-to-1. But what do traders do? They forget this part of it. They forget that it takes the volume of trades for the balance with equal probabilities to end up 50-50, so the absolute sheer difference in the payout will show itself. So what happens is they go to trade number 1, where there is a 50% chance of winning or losing. They use money management number 1 on that trade, and they go -3. What do they do next time they're in that same trade in the same circumstance? They don't take that trade. They've negated the opportunity for this thing to balance itself out at 5-to-1 or 4-to-1 with a 12-pip trade or a 15-pip trade. They've taken away because they won't take the trade. You have to use that same money management scheme when the probability is 50-50. And you want to try and fight to make sure you get that as a minimum conservatively. That'll give you slush in case you're wrong a little bit here or there in your thinking. So I try and fight to make sure I got at least a 50-50. So when I do go -3, I don't walk away. I got to do what? Take that volume of coin toss flips. I know at 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 at the end of the day I'm going to be the winner. Tim might be laughing at me a little because I might hit 7 in a row that go tails. And here's another buck, here's another buck, here's another buck. But he won't be laughing at the end of the day, trust me. We get 50 flips in, 100 flips, 500 pips, he's going to be emptying his ATM account. He's going to be using one of those new Bitcoin ATM cards and selling me his cash and converting his Bitcoin into cash so he can pay me off. So what happens to the average trader is they get that -3 and they go, oh well, like in the example at the beginning where we were at that point where it was 50-50 between the 10 wave, not sure whether it was going to go up and converge or reverse at that point and converge. Equal probabilities on both those paths. So the trader gets there and he takes that trade and he goes -3 and he doesn't take it again. He does something different, and maybe it's the same kind of trade, but, he uses a different kind of scheme for what he wants to do. And you know what happens when you do this, when you have equal probabilities and you start playing this game? He's going to end up with another -3 because when you have choices and you start switching your choices up, you're going to keep finding the losses. This is the headache of the old paradigm trader where, one time they take one action and they lose, so they get to that same situation. They say, well, I'll do it the exact opposite this way. Well, they caught the one time that lost. It's like over here. Let's say I flipped 7 heads in a row. And Tim Phillips, hey man, this is crazy. I'll tell you what, we'll still do $4 to $1. I'll pay you $4 every time you're right. But let's flip it. Let your win be tails. Let heads be me. That's what that old paradigm trader is doing. He's not changing the payout to risk. when you have 50-50. He's just gotten, oh, I had 3 or 4 losses in a row, or in this case 7 losses in a row. Let's switch the coin type. You have tails now instead of heads. As if the tails was the bad luck versus it being a random sequence of a 50% flip. So you don't go to the same trade next time where you had a 50-50 or better odds because you had a loss here or a loss there and change up what you do. Now, here's the punchline, all that. You guys have heard me say this many times, and I'm going to turn it around and give you how this all fits into that thing that I say many times that you already know I'm going to say. What do I say about the trader, let's say with the 62 money map, and I talk about the trader who uses the 62 money map to advance his stop, but he doesn't leg down. He's all in. He's all in 100%. Versus the trader who says, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to use the same harmonic stops to move or the harmonic targets to move my stop loss, but I'm going to leg down along the way. And what have I said about that? Given a volume of trades, this trader is going to make somewhere between 3% and 4% more. So what I'm going to tell you is, last week I put on the screen a money management slide for 30 minutes and for 10 minutes. And I didn't spend that much time on it. People were like, what? You listed 8 money management schemes and you're not spending time on it. Here's why I didn't spend a lot of time on it. The work and all of the math is basically done for you in the upper right-hand corner. The 310 stop reality. That component of what we do. All the work is done for you. So when you get to a certain spot in the trade, if you feel threatened and you still stay all in to see if it goes further, or you get to that certain spot in the trade and you feel threatened and you're all out, or you get to the certain spot in that trade and you feel threatened and you leg down, 1/4 your units, whatever. The reality is, over a volume of trades, all of these traders will be within about 5% of total pips. Yes, I actually said it. It really doesn't matter what money management you run, as long as you use the same money management in every friggin' trade. At the 30-minute level, at the 10-minute level, at the 1-minute level. It's not going to matter if we're deploying the 310, which is built in automatically to our system, if we're using the relevant indicator to take our action, but we're only taking that action, executing it, if we have scale in our favor, and we've looked at it, and it's not a lottery ticket purchase. It's not 1 in 350 million. It's essentially 50-50 or better. If I can't figure out if it's 50-50 or better, what am I doing? Gambling. Do shredder traders gamble? No. So if I can't figure out the odds realistically, and I don't mean talk myself into it like the old paradigm trader who tries to say, yeah, I can see my way clear to 200 pips. It's okay to take this trade because that's the first place price will potentially even be turned around. It doesn't matter what money management scheme you use of the ones we present, as long as you do execute them the same way in every trade. A year from now, when you tally up your 250 trades or 300 trades, or if you're Stewart taking 26 trades in an 8-hour, it might be thousands of trades. When you tally it up and got 2 traders that did the same thing and same identical trades but used different money management, their total pips is going to be within 5%. And you know what? It's not always going to be one ahead of the other. We do know that all in versus legging down is typically about 3 to 4% more. That's definitely within the 5% difference. There may be times where all out is better than all in those threatened positions on an individual trade basis. Just use the same money management in every trade. It doesn't have to be the same in others. And quit, we had some conversation going on. I'm not going to, it's okay. Green questions. There were some questions today, there was some pressing trader to trader. Oh, what are you doing for money management? Oh, blah, blah, blah. There's no secret to it, guys. Pick one of the money management. If you have a question about the money management, ask questions about that money. Hey, money management number 2, what did you really mean by that? Flush out what they are, but then just trade them. Now, the only thing that I'm going to exclude from that list would be the Shredder 62 money map, but I did note on that that was really an 8-hour money management system. It's not a 30-minute money management system. So I would only use the money map when I'm looking, excuse my voice, when I'm looking at an 8-hour convergence. So do the same thing. Yeah, exactly, Gary. It's why you'll hear consistency is important. Don't walk away from a trade because it has a -3 in front of it. Don't record it as bad. Don't record it as being stopped out. Just record it as this is what I have to do to get to the other side of the gate. It's a gate. And there's a troll there. Sometimes he's awake and charges you the -3. Sometimes he doesn't. And you get to keep whatever you get on the other side. It's just a simple gate. So it's the head game part of it. You have to have the knowledge in order for the head game to make sense. So now you can have the head game win, and that allows you then to minimize your emotion in your trading. You're not going to have an attitude of, oh, I did that last time and it didn't work, so I'm going to change it up this time. Because when you change it up, you're always, Murphy's Law. Man, if you're a seasoned trader, you know that's true. It's like, I know it's chauvinistic or not chauvinistic. Yeah, it's male, gender, sexist in some ways. But if you take the traditional, old-fashioned view of male, female, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and you can almost do a Saturday Night Live skit off of it, right? They get in the car, they're going to dinner, it's their date night or whatever. And they're going to dinner, and the guy says, "Where do you want to go?" And the girl says, "I don't care." And he goes, "Okay, let's go to the spaghetti factory." "No, I don't want spaghetti tonight." "Okay, let's go to the steakhouse." "No, I really don't want steak." "Okay, how about some surf and turf?" "No, I don't want seafood tonight." It's like she didn't care, but all these answers, right? So then the next time they get in the car, he says, "Where do you want to go to eat?" And she looks at him and she kind of like crosses her arms and says, "Come on. Surprise me once in a while." Right? And you're like, what the hell? And then next time you're in the car, you're going to dinner, and you're going down the highway, or you're exiting it on a certain exit on the highway, and your wife or girlfriend says, "Where are we going?" And you said, "Well, I thought I'd take you to such and such." "Well, you didn't ask me if I wanted to go there." Right? So she's playing that game of every time the same situation comes along, she's giving you a different answer, which is why it's so hard to be a man in this world. Right? But that's true, right? Any of you guys that have dated a while or different girls or been married, that's true, right? That's true. And the roles might reverse. The roles might be reversed. Depends on the... Yeah, exactly. It depends. Yeah, it's a losing game. What you do is as you're walking out to the car, you drop the keys in her hand and say, "I'm getting in this passenger." You drive, you decide. I'm not going to play the game. Yeah, exactly, Zoe. Thank you. So you don't want to change up what you do. Do the same thing every time. And then the balance will be there. Then the probabilities will play themselves out. And as long as you have risk reward that's appropriate, then take the trade. So as I wind this down, my suggestion for everyone but especially the more kind of greener traders to tab 29 who haven't been trading a lot of silver trades, or maybe you're a silver platinum trader, but you haven't been using trend bars that much. Maybe you haven't used peak 3 that much. So we're putting a different focus. So what I'd really like to see in the shredder group when we post trades, and you know, the FXFX folks for tab 29, I really want those trades going into Pip Club shredder. Let's leave FXFX for some other stuff and some higher mental stuff we might do. So the thing that would be good if you want to ask questions about a trade is at the top, put odds. At the top, put risk reward. Before you take the trade. What you thought it was before you take the trade. So now we have, I hope Debbie wasn't listening. Now you have a little bit of a vehicle in community to get people to share opinions about what the probability of that trade really was at the time you were taking it. Not seeing what happened and going back and saying, oh, that would have been, you know, 10% win, 90% loss. You should have seen. No, don't do that game because they lost the trade. See, when I'm coaching, and I told this to a person today, I'm shifting now for those that are private coached, and it's the same thing in the group at large. My emphasis is no longer, because I don't want you to see the trade as a win or a loss. What I want to see is, did you apply the same thing each time? Did you analyze the scale and the risk reward in the trade? Because if you analyzed the risk reward, you looked at the scale, and technically you were sound, the results of the trade on an individual trade basis don't matter. What gets evaluated is good trade. You know, this shows up. The first time I saw this, it just blew me away. In high school basketball. Okay, I coached rec league and I coached varsity girls basketball 20 years ago. Didn't have it then. But I saw this with boys this last go round, and that was a guy could make a run to the basket, you know, do certain things against the defense, fool them, break somebody's ankles, you know, because they move so quickly, and then go up and shoot the layup and miss the basket. And the whole team will be cheering him. Good take, good take, good take. Because what counted was his approach, how he outfaked the defense. When he does that 10 times in a row, he'll make 6 or 7 of those baskets. The statistics are on his side. The fact that he misses this one is nothing. What he's congratulated on was his moves to get to the basket. Good take. So I want to see trades that are good takes. You did the right stuff. The result doesn't matter. It's going to flush out in the volume of trades. You need to absorb that, guys. I can't say it any better. You need to absorb this. The 310 reality is, it's so much bigger than what you understand. And you've got an indicator which lets you trade it with high percentages. So the traders that are skipping all around doing all sorts of different things, I'm like, unless you're already, the only time you should move from one thing to another is if you've already mastered it. You can't be doing pitchforks one week and trend lines the next, and peak 3 candle close trades the next, and this is what multi-wave said instead of peak 3 the next, and this week I'm all about Fibonacci retracements. Go master one, get your probabilities to at least 50-50, get your risk reward in those types of trades, and trade them. And the only time you should be switching approach should be with mastery of one of them. Mastery meaning I've achieved my 50-50 distribution over a volume of trades, and my risk reward, as I pre-analyzed it, actually turned out to be my actual profit to risk. then you'll be a great trader. But you can't bypass scale. You can't bypass reward risk. Despite the fact I boo-hoo it, in the old paradigm, but I gave you the reason why I do that. To me, it's bogus. Nobody could say you're clear sailing for 200 pips or 300 pips. Not anybody that understands trading. All right. Almost 3 hours. So, any questions? Or comments? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Both Tims, actually. Richard, Josh, Zoe. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to, it's long, so I'm going to try and convert it and get it uploaded, as time moves on here. I'll start converting it as soon as I hang up here. And so it'll take a while to convert. And then I'll upload it to YouTube and post it at the same page that videos 1 through 5 are listed, parts 1 through 5. This will just be labeled part 6. But I've been teaching a lot of this off and on the last several weeks to some of the advanced traders, and it's kind of like, let me put it this way, guys. I always want to do more and deliver and give you guys the gold, but I'm just, and I don't mean this in a braggadocious or arrogant way. I don't got anything else to give you after this, except reinforcement of the same. This is it. There's no more hidden secrets. There's no more how big is the universe of the things I don't know as a trader. You now have 99% of it. Josh, thank God, right? How many more 3-hour sessions from Steve can I take? So I like this session. I think out of everything I taught, now of course you can't teach this day one, but out of everything I've taught over the years, today, teaching this particular session from notes, freehand on the blackboard, was probably my most enjoyable because it has the most honest to God, transparent meat in it that is the difference. It's the change maker. So let me wrap this up. I appreciate you guys on short notice this week taking time out to be here and for the long stretch, because I think we lost one during the entire time frame. So a good stretch of participation and some interaction. I appreciate that. And let's go to it. Let's make some of these trades. Let's drop the guardrail and the fences and post trades. Ask about, post in your trade, probability of entry, probability of win-loss, and then your calculated reward risk in the trade. And then let's go from there. All right, thanks y'all. I'll be in Facebook land. Y'all have a great weekend.